All right, welcome back to episode 16 of the Just God Pod. Today I have another one of my mentors on, somebody that I look up to greatly for his. As I ended last episode with Kyle and Bo, I said that his relationship and walk with the Lord is rare, and he's a rare human being. And he's just somebody that I truly look up to in everyday life, Mr. Blake Hardegree. Blake, how you doing today?
Man, I'm good, man. As I normally say, blessed beyond belief. It's just true, though.
Which is very true, and you live that lifestyle. So
Hey, it makes it a lot easier when you live his lifestyle. I'll tell you that.
that's right. Amen. Well, I want to give a big shout out to this show's sponsor, greaterpurpose.co, whose mission is to equip and empower business leaders to build great businesses for a greater purpose. And we're going to go straight into Blake's verse of the week for the listeners out there. As you guys know, this is something that can be a life verse, their favorite verse, a season that they're in, and God's revealing it to them. But without further ado, Blake, what is your verse of the week?
Man, I go Psalm 37, and I always go 3 through 4. I know it's not one verse, it's two. So I
No,
don't
we're
know if
good.
I'm at just to make sure. Uh, but you could do it into one. But no, this is a life verse. I love it, man. It's just one thing that when things get hard, I try to sing to this, and that's so Psalm 37, 3 through 4 is trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And that's Psalm 37, 3 through 4, right there.
And what is that? I mean, you said it's your life verse. Like,
Yep.
we were talking before we jumped on this, and you said you always sync back to this, but why? Like, why? Why is this your life verse?
It's one of those things like throughout my life, I've just been given things from the world,
Mm,
and they never work out. And then when I always trust in God, it always works out. And so it's one of
mm,
those things that I don't remember when I heard it, how long ago I heard it, but I was just like, man, so if I trust God and do good things while I'm in this land and delight in Him, He'll give me the desires of my heart. Let's try that out.
mm.
And it works.
Yeah.
uh, and that's kind of what it is. And that's always what I sing to because when man, I could unpack this first and we can get into it. But like how I really look at it, I'm a 5-year-old, so you got to remember that I'm a very simple minded person. So,
Mm,
but I put trust in the Lord and trust. I love that word. It's one of those things you give it all to that person. Everything they say, everything they do, you just give it to them and you trust it, right? Dwell. It's like be in, like not just like um, how do I say this? Like when you're in something and you're really intentional and you're focused at what you're doing at all times, like where you're living. So dwell in the land, right? But he says this word, it's enjoy safe pasture.
mm,
So when he says that, most people just think, oh, okay, you just like enjoy being fed, like because that's what a pasture. It's like
mm.
feeding. But it says enjoy safe pasture. And so like I always think about like safe is him.
Yeah,
Like he says,
100%.
do not fear, like it's one of those things. So enjoy safe pasture. And so when you enjoy safe pasture, to me, what that's telling me is enjoy the safe, which is God, safe feeding, which is God fed. And then the unsafe pasture is the world. It's
Mm,
just hey man, don't enjoy the world's what it's feeding you. Don't enjoy that because it's not going to be good for you, and it's going to change the next verse, which is the desires of your heart. So if you delight yourself in the Lord, which is that safe pasture, then He'll give you the desires of your heart. But the thing is, He doesn't say just his pasture. He says delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. So if you have a little bit of the world feeding you,
mm,
you're getting the desires of your heart, right?
yeah.
And so you're getting those things, but is it the desires that we want from God, or is it the desires that we want from the world? Does that
Yeah,
make sense? And
100%
that's
does.
something I've battled. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like recently, like I've been reading a lot of Paul's letters, and he gives a warning of a lot of like warnings about the desires of the world and like of the flesh, and he warns like what can come of it, and basically like really emphasizing how we should be continuing to stay in step with the Spirit. Like
Sure.
I love Galatians 5:22 through 25 that talks about, I mean, it talks about the desires of the flesh, and then talks about the desires of the Spirit, and as we continue to walk in step with the Spirit, God will reveal the desires of our heart.
Sure.
As literally as you're just stating in Psalm 37. I think that's just like it gets lost upon. And what I've found recently is like, I did like a social media fast for like 2 weeks,
Cool.
and
Yeah.
like that is like the desires in my heart change just by being off
Sure.
social media. Like I'm just not so caught up in the world. Like I'm like actually every time I want to open up Instagram, I open up my Bible or like open up a
Sure.
devotional or something that like got me closer to God. And it's like, oh, I had a lot more peace, a lot more just inner joy, and I was just like, why don't I do this more often? Like, yeah,
Sure.
what would a world without social media look like? You know what I'm saying?
That's right. It's just
And
changing your own algorithm, right?
yeah,
And basically with you saying that, man, that goes in. That's all biblical. He tells you all those things, right? But you have these like even in your brain. This is the mental performance part of me coming out here.
mm,
But you have these like learning paths in your brain. It's like that's like habits. They become things, and you start doing these habits. So it's like when you maybe I don't know. Sorry for the listeners, but when you sit on the toilet and instead of open up the Bible, you open up your Instagram, and the next thing you know, you're like, I've been in here for 45 minutes. I haven't done anything,
yeah,
and it's like I've watched videos or whatever, and you're watching things that you've just wasted 45 minutes of your life that
yeah,
is really precious, if that
yeah,
makes sense. And so, what are you feeding yourself with? But so that learning path that you're talking about, you have these habits, these triggers, right? So every time you go to the bathroom, you open that up, or every time you go do something, you open it up. You lay in bed, whatever it may be. So when you change that learning path to something else and you change that habit, it's like when you walk through the grass. When you walk through your yard, you walk through one way. It just has like a little bit, but if you were to walk there 100 times, that grass starts to wither, and now it's starting to be like a little dirt path.
yeah,
It's the same kind of thing. So,
yeah.
but
And
yeah,
you
that's kind
know,
of what I thought when you
well,
said that.
when what I thought when you said that, and I don't. We can come back to this topic, but your new book.
Yeah. Ooh,
Let's talk on that. I don't want to like throw that on you, but I mean,
no, that's all right.
like I said, this is God's podcast, and this is like
That's right.
I didn't have this written down, but as you're saying, you're big on the grass isn't always greener; it's greener where you water it.
That's
So
right.
let's
100%.
talk a little bit about your new book and the process that God is kind of taking you on.
It's funny, man. The process has been a lot of patience. It's been
Mm,
challenging because it's just something gets brought up. We were hoping for March 1st. I don't think it's going to happen anymore. So it's it's like fine tuning it because there's a lot of like it's really fun. I call it like a how do you describe it? Like nuggets, like God nuggets. Like the guy's phone number, it's got some verses, but like it looks like a phone number in the book, but really it's like Jesus coming, dying, and then coming back, if that
mm,
makes sense. Or like being born and then dying and then being raised. It's like all these verses is his phone number.
yeah,
And it's just like funny, but it's
yeah, yeah,
just little bitty nuggets of that stuff. So it's just stuff like that. But then I got this guy who's editing it and he's awesome, man. But he's like, oh, imagine if you did this. I'm like, oh, that's genius. But does it mess up the story? Does it do this? So we kind of have been, we've been moving and adding and just making sure the story all makes sense throughout it. So it's because it's me. I'm a baseball coach. I'm not a writer by any, or I was a baseball coach. I can't say that anymore. But I'm not this like author. So
yeah,
it it's one of those things. It's not like a crazy long book. I'd compare it to like a John Gordon book.
mm,
It is a parable. Jesus spoke in parables, so I said, why not speak the way he did? It worked
mm,
for him, so should work for me in my mind. We'll find out. Stay tuned. But
um,
yeah, that's in the works, man. But I've been it's been fun to do.
yeah, yeah. That's like similar. I mean, similar to this podcast. It's been fun for me. Obviously, it's not. I'm not doing this for like my enjoyment. It's just part of the what I get out of what I get out of these podcasts is talking to people like you. And you just mentioned you were a baseball coach. You
Yeah,
said I am a baseball coach, and you said I was a baseball coach.
sure.
But at my time at ECU, you were all 3 years I was there. You were there. You got in the year before me, but you've been a baseball coach. Really, I mean, you've been a part of the game of baseball almost your entire life. and
Yeah.
then leading up to last year is when you made the transition into more of a corporate role. But talk a little bit about on. I mean, if we can go down the baseball path, or we can just go on what really got you to transition out of baseball,
Yeah.
or we can do it all. So just speak on that.
Yeah. What got me out of baseball was man, I don't want my family to take offense to this, but it was my family.
Mm-hmm.
But in really, it came from higher. It came from God. All of it's God. Everything
Mm-hmm.
in that I give tribute is to Him for sure. But you I had these moments like when I was a kid. My dad, I wish I knew then what I know now. Everybody says that, and that's like the truest thing ever. But he would miss stuff. He wouldn't always be there. And when we got married, I told my wife, I said, "Hey, if that ever happens, tell me because I'm not doing that."
Mm-hmm.
And so that happened, but it didn't happen last season. It happened the year before
Mm-hmm.
because Graham was he was in his like month to year age, if that makes sense, and going into his two, and I was like, or going into the end of his one. And I remember being like, she told me, she's like, "Man, you're like gone all the time. This is really hard. Yada yada. You're never here." Because I came home, I'd be like, "When did he learn to say that? When did he learn that? Like that's." She's like, "That's like 2 weeks old. Like, what are you talking about?" I was like, "Oh, okay." Uh, and then so she was like, "Yeah, man, you're just gone a lot." I was like, "Oh man," and I just felt like a tug. Like,
Yeah.
"Hey, man, are you doing this for you, or are you doing this for me?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's a good question.
Yeah.
I
Well,
know the answer, but I'm not ready to tell you yet." That was from God saying that.
100%. Before you go any further, I want to give background context for the listeners.
Yeah.
I didn't really mention this in the intro, but Blake was the director of baseball operations for ECU baseball for was it 4 full seasons?
Yep. 4 full seasons with. I was there 5 years. The COVID year, we. I don't. I mean, you kind of count it, but not
You can
really.
kind of count it.
Yeah, it's like a
But
count.
Blake's job really required him to spend a lot of time at the field, working with the players, working a lot of behind the scenes work. Like the ops guys, I realized, in across all of college baseball or any college athletic, they're the backbone of the team, of the organization. Like without a good ops person, the team's not going to be good. And I can firmly say that Blake was the best ops person in the entire country, and he
I
stepped away from the
appreciate.
job as we're talking about now. After really being in baseball for, like I said, all of his life, stepped away from it to spend more time with his family. And throughout this entire process, I remember, I mean, he called a team meeting to let the team know, and
Oh, that sucked.
it sucked for everybody. I can't imagine how you kind of went into that. Obviously not a decision that like was easy on him, but I remember him saying to the team like he had been wrestling with God for months, almost a year about it,
Hmm.
and it got to the point where like he couldn't wrestle with God anymore, and was obedient to his calling and his word. And so last season was his final season with ECU baseball. And like I said, I didn't want to cut you off, but now he's transitioned into a more corporate role, so we can pick up on that.
Yeah.
So
Well, I appreciate all that. That means a lot to me, man. I love that place. And I would. It's funny you call me the backbone. I call the managers the backbone. Those
yeah,
guys, they do all the grunt work. Like, man, I love those guys.
yeah,
Super thankful for them.
yeah,
Um, but no, yeah, and that is, man. That's exactly what happened. It was one of those moments. So a little bit more history lesson. Me and my dad had just a terrible, terrible relationship. He was
mm,
awesome when I was like 12, and then I mean, there was just like a transition of there was a lot of stuff going on, and me and him butted heads about everything. And like he said this thing to me, and this is when I crossed the line. And like why I became so positive. Actually, was something he told me. So I actually honor him because I don't want people to think, oh man, he's like talking. Like I actually honor my father because without him doing what he did, I wouldn't be who I am. There's no question there.
yeah,
So I do give glory to God for that, and I do give glory to him for that because that was. But he did, man. One time so it was my brother, me, two little brothers, and a little sister, and there's a bunch of us. I got two half siblings too, but he, I don't remember exactly what was going on, but it was like one of those things that was just sitting there, and um, I've never told anybody this publicly, so I'm telling you this is crazy. But it was like he just looked at me and said, "I wish I never would have had you kids,"
Mm,
and it like broke me. I
mm,
felt like terrible. But I remember I walked in, like walked in because he told us in the car, and I go inside. I remember like looking in my room, and I was like, "Hey man, you know what? I'm good on that."
yeah.
Like I felt awful, man. I was like crying. But like I remember I looked in the mirror, and I was like, "I'm good on that." You know what? We don't need that. That's fine, no problem. And that's kind of when I kind of wrote him off, which was not the right thing to do, and a lot of turmoil, a lot of problems, because that's not God's way. That's not loving the good stuff. That's loving the evil and what you want, the revenge, right? And so that whole thing happened, but it's one of those things I made. I drew a line in the sand, is what we would talk about in mental performance, and never going back, right? But I drew a line there, and I was like, I will never let anybody ever feel as bad as I ever did,
Mm,
ever. Like
mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter how broken you are. And then it was like Jesus telling you, he's like, hey man, you can be whatever. You could be the worst human ever, but I love you. And that is, and it's awesome because he showed me that. And so that's like something that I love, but it's one of those things that, did I hate that it happened? Yes, absolutely. But am I glad it happened? Yeah. But I remember feeling just absolutely broken, and I hated that. And so I was like, man, that's it. And so that's kind of how that started. But yes, but that was one of those things. Like my dad, he had a cool career, man. Like he had like had a cup of coffee in the big league, or no, not the big league. He did get drafted by the A's out of high school. Didn't take it when played college football. Did some stuff with Cowboys and like did some cool stuff. But he was like superhero, man. Like, and then when you hear that from your superhero, you're like, hold on a
Crushes
second.
you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just remember being like, I won't be like him. And so that brings it up into now, right? So I'm not home. I'm not doing anything. I'm not like leading my family. And I kept getting told like, hey, who's going to lead your family when you're not there? He's like, you're really good at leading these guys. Like they got leaders. They got teammates. They're good. But like Graham doesn't have anybody. He's got your wife, but she's not the man of the house, you know? And I kept like hearing that. And I was like, let's go one more year of coaching, you know?
Yeah.
uh, yeah. And then he was like, back to the original thought was, are you doing this for yourself or are you doing this for me? I was like, I know that answer. I
Yeah.
know that answer. Um, I'm not ready to voice it out loud, but I knew it in my head, if
Mm,
that makes sense.
yep.
Um, and so then I was talking to my wife about it, and we were talking about it. And then I still remember December 15th. The boys had left that semester, and I was shaking because I knew it was. I'd been like preparing for a month about talking to Coach Godwin about it,
Mm,
and then I kept like saying, "Go in there." I don't know why I was just terrified of him, which I shouldn't have been, but I was. And man, Cliff was awesome, man. So gracious, like beyond understanding. Took it great. I mean, we were crying together, praying for each other, and that was like, man, dude, what in the world am I worried about? Like, this is God breathed, man. This is like I'm doing the right thing. It's just peace, because really, it was me holding on. It was like to this day, I miss the boys. I love that. I love that job, man. I love going out there. What's up, everybody? How y'all doing? Talking smack, stirring pots, like doing all that stuff. But it's one of those things. It's like God will give it back to me somehow, and that's
yeah.
how I view it. Because He gives you the desires of your hearts, and so that's what I'm leaning on. It goes back to that. But
Yeah.
um, long
Well,
story long, that's it.
yeah. Well, talk about like, I mean, like I said, I was telling you this before we started the episode, but like, also for the listeners, background context, he essentially was quitting his job and did not have one lined up because he was just so
Oh yeah,
obedient. He was so obedient to the call. Like he didn't question it. Well, he did question it for some time. Like he didn't want to accept it. I don't want to say question it. He didn't want to accept it for some time.
sure.
But then once you finally did, and you had that conversation with Coach Godwin, you did not have another job lined up.
Nope.
And talk about, because the process of actually getting to where you are now, like we had a conversation over the phone a couple months ago where you told me what you're doing now, and how God had His hand through it all, and it was like I wasn't even surprised at the opportunity that you got because of how faithful you were to him. But I think that's just like a super powerful message for the listeners to hear as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I did not have a job lined up. Cliff even told, or CG, I don't know what the world calls it, Coach Godwin, sorry. Uh, but he was like, he told me, we went and got coffee. This was like a few months ago, and he was like, I could not believe you didn't. He was like, I'll figure it out. That's what I told him. I said,
Yeah,
I said, God will figure it out. But that comes back to a history lesson of God, like always taking care of me. I've got some crazy God stories. And, again, I'm not perfect, man. Like I sit here, I'm broken just like everybody. I fall to the world, and I to this day I'm working on getting better. But the closer you are to Him, the more you like Him. The farther you are from Him, the farther you are from acting like Him, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, we growing up, man, we like I said, my dad had like some cool opportunities, but we didn't have much money. Like what everybody would think if a guy played in the professionals, and they also didn't get paid what they get paid now back then. And so he had like blown a ton of his money. My mom was a nurse. And we had 5 kids, so that's a lot. That's expensive. Um, I've got one kid about to have two, and it's one's already expensive. I can't imagine five.
yeah,
But but like there were times, and I tell people this, they think it's crazy, but like there was times we didn't eat dinner because we didn't have enough food because we owed so much on this, and that, and whatever. And so like hot dogs, my son loves them, and I think it's a joke. It might be a joke from God. I don't know if it is or not, but my son loves them, and I cannot stand them because we ate them so much as a kid. Like we
yeah,
had them in mac and cheese and with beans. Like that's like just what we ate
yeah,
all the time. But anyway, but there was like times like you go to bed and you would be hungry and you just sorry man, we gotta wait till payday on Friday. And
yeah,
so like Friday was awesome, right?
yeah,
And so just like things like that, you're like helping out, giving your check to your parents when you're working in high school. It's just like, hey, what do we gotta do? Just stuff like that. And so, but saying that all, like my trust has just been in him because he's always provided. Whether I didn't eat one night, I ate the next day somehow. Um, there was always something that came up. I've got the $100 bill blowing across the street in
I
front of my car story. I don't know
I
if
wanted
there's,
I
there's
wanted
that.
to actually ask you about that if we can
Yeah,
talk about that real quick.
sure. So yeah, that was God has just always provided is the ultimate
Yeah,
story of like I just knew I was going to get a job because God has always taken care of me. He always provided me with like job opportunities and things like that. But the $100 bill story was I had like was dating this girl at the time, thought I was gonna marry her, and I worked at a golf course, and we go. I got paid that day, and so I like take her out, and so I owed whatever I owed to whoever, my mom, my dad, whatever I needed, and then I'd like finance for the week. And we go to this place that she really wanted to go to for dinner, and now she came from some good money, and so I was like, okay, yeah, we'll go to this place. I've never heard of it, so we go there. So we sit down, and we're like on a date. I'm like, yeah, get whatever you want, yada yada yada. And like, there's no prices on the menu, so that's my first problem.
uh,
So I'm like, yeah, I want this, right? So
yeah, I'll take
we go,
a salad and a water.
yeah, 100%, right? And so we ate good though, but I remember like, man, I get the bill, and I was like, is this our bill? Like, this is just for 2 people. Like, they messed this up, right? And I look at it like,
Yeah,
oh, that's right. So I put my debit card on there and pay for it, and like everything's great. Take her home. As soon as she leaves, I'm like, or as soon as I leave, I'm like, what am I doing? I don't have any money for gas to get through to payday. Like I don't have this. I don't have X. I'm just like thinking of all the lack, right? Which is not the right way to think, but that's all I could think of. And so I'm like going, 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 and I'm driving. There's like it's funny because there's a comic book store in a church. I swear, it's on Western Street. I don't know if it's still there to this day, but it's in Amarillo. But there's really nothing else over there. But I'm driving, and there's a church on my right, and there's a comic book store, and that's why I think God is awesome and super funny. I actually think He's got a good sense of humor. But I'm like praying, like, man, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna talk to my parents about this? Like we don't ask for money. Like this is a bad deal. I've got to get to work. This was stupid, stupid, bad mistake, bad plan. And I'm like praying about it. And literally, I look up and I'm driving, and there's this like little bill that blows right in front of my car. And I was like, that was $100 bill. And so I like slam on the brakes, get over, and I like turn around and I go park in this like there's like this open field that was there. It wasn't like there was nothing else there. And I look and across the street to church and I go into this like grass patch in front of this comic book store. And I grab it and it was $100 bill. So the first thing I did is I like pick it up and I look. I was like, oh my gosh, this thing's real. I was like, that's unreal. And I like while I'm looking up, I look at the church and there's one car in the parking lot at the church. And I'm like, I got to drive over there. So I drive over there. All the doors are locked, can't get in. And I just was like, thank you. Like I needed, like this is exactly what I needed because I drove it was a 1992 Chevy Tahoe. It was like a 4-door, but that thing, like I think it got 8 miles to the gallon. That thing drank gas. Just what we had, and so it was one of those much needed. It was like, but again, it was you ask and he gives, man, and he provided, and it was one of those things. I got to enjoy something with somebody, and then he was like, "Just wait, I got something better for you." And it was like, "Cool," if that
Seriously.
makes sense. So, yeah, I've
Seriously.
got some crazy stories like that.
Yeah. And
God
then
always
you
picking
said
me up.
just wait and he'll provide something even greater. And
Yeah,
now the role that you're in now, I mean, it's obviously like you said, you love baseball, you love being around the guys, but I mean, for you to have this job really without any experience in that role that you're in
yeah,
At Grover Gaming.
yeah. I love it.
Uh, talk about that. I mean, like you said, he always provides.
Yeah, no, it is, and I mean he's. It's funny. I worked for free till I was 26.
Yeah,
I don't recommend that to anybody listening, especially if you're young. Don't do that unless it's God breathed. That's for sure. But it was like I was a junior college baseball coach. I was working. I got paid $680 a month. I lived there. I didn't have to pay for food. That was nice, but you had to pay all your bills and stuff. And a, one of my friends I met in the community, he worked at GKN, which is like it's a wheels company, and with the way they make tractor tires and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I need to figure out how to make some more money. Like $680 ain't that much. I had to pay student loans back and all this stuff. And so he's like, hey, come work here. You can work 3 hours a day and you'll work in quality assurance. And I was like, what's quality assurance? I don't even know what the assurance even means. And so anyway, I take that job because it was just like, God was like, hey, man, let me help you out. Gave me that. And then I get that job offer at Samford to be a volunteer ops guy. And I was just got engaged. I literally got engaged to Sarah 2 weeks later. This opportunity comes up. My head coach says apply for it. I email 20 minutes later. He's calling me, telling me I can have the job. And I was like, what is going on? He's like, yeah, you work for free. I was like, okay. So I call Sarah and I'm like, hey, you won't believe this is going on. Uh, Her dad, take a loan out from him. He was awesome. So I moved down there. But like all these things is just like all these people were just willing to help. And I literally just asked this guy to marry his daughter, and I make $600 a month
yeah,
basically. He's like, sure, go ahead. And I'm like, man, what? Hey, I'm gonna take a job and make less than $680 a month, and I need you to give me money, but I'm still gonna marry your daughter, type thing. And he's
yeah,
like, yeah, man, I believe in you, which
yeah,
was really cool. And it's just those people that he gives you. Um, Most people wouldn't make sense that wouldn't probably do that. So it was just cool, man. So that, and then he's just always given me those things, and so um, I mean that's really it, man. I've never doubted him when it comes to being taken care of, and that it
yeah,
goes back to the verse of Psalms 37 3-4, man. And I give glory to him. Again, I'm not perfect. I don't always enjoy safe pasture, which is bad. I got to get off the enjoying bad pasture too. But he's been very, 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 very gracious to me, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
A
But yeah,
100% has. Um, I just like I was saying, like I told you this, and we already kind of touched on it, but like when you didn't have that job lined up, what was going through your mind in a sense? Like for the listeners out there, I think it'd be important for them to hear. Like it's hard. It's hard to get out of God's way. Like it's hard to get out of your own way so that God can work.
yep.
So I'm sure like there was a lot of I don't know. Was it doubt? Was it like man, I'm gonna lose sleep. Well, like what? Just kind of talk about that process of like I don't know what's next, but God does.
Man, actually, I didn't have any doubt. I didn't have any of that, to be honest. It was, hey, well, first thing I did, I said, hey, Sarah, where do you want to live? We've lived all over the country,
Mm,
from Iowa, Nebraska, Birmingham. Like she has family in Arizona. I got family in Texas. She's got family in South Carolina. It was like, where do you want to go? She said, I want to stay in Greenville. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll find a job here. And like, but there was no doubt. It was, I just knew I was going to get something,
yeah,
or I was gonna go find some. I don't know. It was like I really didn't worry about it, because I remember there was some, like, during the season, people were talking to me about it, and I'm like, hey man, I'm waiting until I'm gonna enjoy every second,
yeah,
and I'll worry about the job after the season. I want to make sure I give everything to this team that I can
yeah,
give to them, you know. Um, but really, that um, I did really that. What was going through my head was just enjoy every second of what I was doing. To be
yeah,
honest with you, and trust him. Like, literally, just, I mean, something's gonna happen. I, I say this, and this might be bad. So, um, God, if it's bad, tell me. That's for sure. But I always say, hey, God, this is your problem. Ball's in your court. I'll do whatever you want me to do. So you just show me where to go. Shut the door. I always say, close the doors that are supposed to be closed, and just keep the ones open. Like, crack it, and if that's the one, just fly it open. And
yeah,
that's exactly what happened with all this.
yeah,
Um, but that's what I
and
always do: is put the ball in his court.
yeah, and He'll show you the desires of your heart.
Yeah,
He'll
yeah,
close the doors that need to be closed, and He'll open the ones that need to be opened, or leave them open. Um, but my follow up question to all of this, like your entire life, really, is like, and I think I've touched on this on past episodes as well, but I do believe that there are levels to spiritual maturity, because I wasn't where I'm at now in my walk and in my relationship with God did not look like this a year ago, 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago. So how did you continue to like level up into this faith of like I'm putting all my faith in God, because a lot, and I was this way. I mean, really before really before a couple weeks ago, like when my knee was healed, like that brought my faith to a whole nother level of God.
sure,
He revealed Himself to me in a way that I've never seen before, and I was
sure,
like, yeah, I will never ever doubt God ever again. But before that, I could have said like, yeah, yeah, like I fully believe. But
sure,
looking back, it's like I still think I could have been 99% full belief, but I still had that 1% of like, I don't think He can heal my like.
sure.
I was putting a limit on God, but
Your
in
lack
your
of faith. Yeah.
in your case, it's like there is no limits on what He can do. And like I said, my question is, how did you get to that level?
Um. Honestly, I how did I get there? I always just say, the more I read about him, like, I just love, like, there's a song too. It's like, it makes me laugh just because God does the unthinkable where men do the thinkable,
Mm,
if that makes sense.
yeah,
And so it's just one of those things, like, I don't know, like, it's when you read about him and you get close to him and you see these stories, and then these things start happening to you and you put your trust in there. It's just, to me, it's one of those things. He's never let me down. Um, it's not always at the time that I want, but I always get an answer. If that makes sense.
yeah,
But that would be it. Is just, I've seen everything that he's done for me,
yeah,
and the more things that he does for me, because trust me, I ain't doing anything for him. Everything that I do for him is from him. If that
yeah,
makes sense, it ain't me doing it. Um, but that would be my answer. Is
yeah,
just, the more I've leaned on him, he's done things.
yeah.
And so hey, I'm gonna keep leaning right there, if that makes sense. Because
He's he's never let me down thus far.
yeah,
Like,
and it's not really like I don't want it to sound like, oh, I'm leaning on him to get what I want, because
yeah,
that's not it. Because he knows your heart, right?
yeah,
And I don't want people to get that confused. But it's really just having the heart and the faith in him is really is what it is what's leveled me. I like that term, leveled up, because I like the stuff like what's that song? But he says David brought a rock to a sword fight.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's just a God thing, man. Just
Yeah.
some guy, you come to a sword fight and this guy shows up with a rock and you're like, yeah, okay, that guy's not going to win. And shocker, that guy wins.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
But just stuff like that. I just think God's going to do stuff. And then the other thing is he's going to do it whether I like it or not. So it don't matter really what I want, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But
I feel like the minute you finally accept his will is like the minute you like literally how you accepted, like you didn't want to accept it for a long time, but you were
yeah,
wrestling with it. But the minute you
yeah,
accept it, it's like it was gonna happen regardless.
that's right.
Um,
But that would be my answer. I don't know if that's a great answer, if that answer makes sense. But does that make sense to you?
it does. One thing that I wrote down just hearing you talk about it is like a gradual increase. Like that's kind of like how I interpreted it is like you said you get into the word, and as you get into the word, like you're gonna naturally continue to learn more. It's gonna be hard not to. Like there's some days, no doubt, where I will open up my Bible and I'm like, yeah, I missed. Like I didn't understand everything that he was trying to communicate to me there. But the next day when I open it up again, I'm probably gonna like I'm not gonna go a whole year and be like, I didn't learn anything from God this year if I open up my
Sure,
Bible every day.
sure,
So like the gradual increase of like I'm just gonna continue to stay in the Word. I'm gonna be consistent with it. And over
sure,
time, I'm gonna look back 6 months from now and be like, "Oh wow, like I have grown." It's hard to do it, in the day to day. Like nothing changes, but you
sure.
look back a year from now and everything changes.
That's right.
Um, and so you just have to stay in the word. You got to stay consistent with it. And I think
Sure,
that can be very discouraging, especially just thinking about like when I was new in my faith and I wouldn't understand it right away. I'd be like, dang, like I'm missing something. Like, is it me? Like, is this my fault? Am I supposed to be understanding everything that God is trying to communicate to me? And
sure.
it's in His timing. I'll understand it and grasp it and all that stuff. So,
That's right.
I guess for the listeners, don't get discouraged
Yeah.
if you don't get it right away. Just stay in it. Just stay with it. Keep showing up.
Well, and then to talk about this too, like for their understanding is just, there's this like motivational speaker, he says it, but it's, if you look at God, that's what he does with people is he, he allows you to grow, right? So like the creator of the world, if he just gave you patience, you would never know the value of it because you've always had it.
Yeah,
But when you have an opportunity to become patient and then you consistently work on that and you become patient, you're like, wow, look at the beauty and patience. You get less angry, your thoughts are clear, you do all these things. Now you know the value of it. Now go teach that to people and use that. Right. So like he he does these things to show you the value of what he can actually do. And
yeah,
that is what my story is it's just a bunch of me seeing the value of him instead of the value of me because I can't do the things he does. I don't have what I have without him. And so when you have him and you go through these things, it's not just this, hey, give me $1 million. Could he do that? Yes. He could give you whatever you wanted, but then you will never know what it's like to to gain that and to have experience and do that. And then when you do have it, what are you going to do with it? Like you learn all these things and you grow in it and you learn to become valuable for him,
yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah,
And that's what he's teaching you is whether, but like, it's just like what you said about consistently reading the Bible. If he just gave it to you, you probably wouldn't go back to have the Bible. I just prayed the one time, I got what I needed. I'm good. I'm out. See ya. It's
yeah,
just like the story of the guy who he got all of his money. He left his dad, went and partied. The other guy just hang out, and he comes back, and God's still gonna welcome you back. He's gonna be like, "Let's go. I'm glad you're
yeah,
back.
yeah,
Look how valuable it is to be with me instead of doing your own thing, wasting all this stuff." It's like it's that exact story.
yeah,
Um, he's going to just show you the value in him.
yeah.
So
And we're never too far gone. That's for certain.
that's
And
that's right.
that's the story of the prodigal son for sure. I mean, as you kind of just referenced right there, like we can try to run and get as far away from God as possible, but the second we turn around, he's always right there waiting for us with open arms, and that's the beauty of him and his love that he has for us. I mean, so much that he sent his son to die on the cross for us. So
Mm,
that's
amazing.
it is
God,
amazing stuff.
when you have a kid, I hope you're blessed to have one, man. But Whew, God's a lot tougher than me. I can't imagine that.
Yeah, let's talk. I mean,
Big G.
talk about Graham. Talk about. I know we probably could have done this a little bit earlier in the episode. Just talk about your family now, Sarah and Graham, and one more on the way. So
Yeah,
congratulations on to you guys on that. But
thank you.
uh, just just talk on. I mean, I've gotten to experience or just be around Graham, and it's like for the listeners out there, I kid you not, this kid is like the happiest kid of all time. Like he's just always smiling. I don't think I've ever heard him like pout or cry or complain. Like
Well, he
he's
does
just
do
like
that.
always got a smile on his face. It's incredible.
Sure. Big G, man. Yeah, Graham's a stud, man. He's been a super big blessing, and it's one of those things, man. Our prayers for him were that, man, that he has those things, and God's been super faithful with that, which has been good. And so we're super thankful for that. But he is, man. He's given me a whole new outlook on God, to be honest.
Yeah,
Because when you're in charge of being a dad, you kind of see through. I'm not saying I see through God's lens by any
yeah,
means, but you have a different lens of like guiding and raising. I'm like, man, he's probably doing this to me. Stop touching that. Stop
yeah,
going back to that. And you're like, it's bad. I don't know how else to say it. Just stop doing it, right? And he goes and does it, and you're like, or you get mad, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's like, man, be gracious, be this, be this, do what he's telling you to do. It's gonna be so much better, you do those things. So, he's been a super blessing to us and our family, that's for sure. But yeah, he's the man, dude. He's the
yeah.
best.
And then the one on the way, 3.5 weeks away, correct?
Yep, yep,
And it's another boy, correct?
yep. That's right.
Dang, so Sarah's gonna be a boy mom.
That's right. And she's got what? She's got Big G. She'll have the baby number two is gonna be Connor. So super fired up about that. And then she's got me. I'm a 6 foot 2.5, 5 year old. So she's got a bunch of toddlers and kids running around her life.
Well,
So
we'll
pray
be
for
praying.
her, people.
We'll be. I was gonna say
Yeah,
we'll be praying for her there.
no doubt. And my dog. My dog is basically me too, but just an animal.
Yeah, that's
So,
awesome. Well, Blake, I usually kind of let my guests as we wrap up just pick something that like if I didn't bring something up that you wanted to talk about, I usually allow my guests an opportunity to share whatever the Lord has placed on their heart. So if you have anything that I missed or that you just want to talk about or whatever is on your heart, now's the time to do it.
man, I do. It's funny you say that because I was sitting there. I don't know. It just was tugging me, but I do have one thing,
Hmm?
and it's what really separated me. And I'm still working through this, man. John Conway's been awesome. I said it in his office, like, I guess I've been working at Grover for 5 months. So it's probably 3 months ago ish. But I walked in his office and we were talking about, I was like, man, dude, we got to get the ego out, right? And everybody says that's edging God out. But it's really like when you can take yourself out of your own life and it's all biblical, right? Like Jesus sits there, hey, pick up your own cross.
Yeah,
Like, take yourself out. Like, do what you're supposed to do. It's the log in your own eye. It's you. Like, you are in the way of getting to where you want to be and those things. And so that's just the thought that comes to me is when you can fully surrender, which I still have and I still work on it. But there are moments where when I get frustrated, I'm like, you know what? My son has no idea why I'm frustrated.
hmm,
I'm yelling at him. He has no idea why, but it's just because his expectation is short of what I want it to be. And he's 2. And I'm trying to think of him as a 12-year-old, right?
yeah,
But I'm mad and I'm sinning because of me, and my problem. Instead of loving on him and
yeah.
saying, hey, teaching, guiding, doing those things. And so it's one thing that for me is just swallowing the pride, if that makes sense, and really just detaching yourself. And I think that is when I've gotten the closest to God is when I do those things is like, hey man, it's not about you. Stop making it about you. It's about
Mm.
God. Whether you walk through the grocery store or you walk through whatever it may be, just it ain't about you. Like, hey,
What
this wants to happen? Let the
Matthew
Lord do it.
Matthew 23:12, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted.
Yep.
I mean, that's basically like, and Todd Howell kind of preaches on this at our Bible study. Sometimes it's like the battle of self. Like
Oh,
it's
I
self.
like that. Todd Howard's the man, by the
I
way.
know.
Sorry for the
Yeah,
sidebar. He is the man.
he is. Um, and he's really revealed that to me. Like he's taught the group. Um, and I mean I don't have my phone on me, but um, there was this text message that he sent me talking about the battle of self, and I'll send it to you, and maybe I can even
Please.
post a clip of it on this video. But it essentially was just saying about how we can't get out of God's way. Or like I was saying earlier, like we can't get out of our own way to allow God to work in our life. And in reality, like you see a lot of people that, and there's somebody said this once, but there's two types of people in this world: those that are humble and those that are about to be.
Mm,
And you see a lot of people like, look at me, look at me, look at me, and every single time I'm just thinking to myself, like, there is only one person that is only worthy of all the glory and all the praise, all the lights on him, and that's Jesus, and
I love it.
that's just what always pops up in my mind, especially like if people come up to me after a game or like or praising me on social media or something after a good game, and I'm like, it's not even me. Like
That's right.
all the glitter, like you should never be praising a human being on this
That's
earth.
right.
The only, I mean, God put on flesh. Jesus Christ is, I guess, the only human being
Sure.
that is worthy of any praise. Um,
Yep.
but like you're saying, a lot easier said than done because we have this intrinsic motivation to exalt ourselves, and if we can
So
just
true.
learn to get out of the way. So
Man, it is, man. Just get out of the way, let him do it, because it's going to be a lot better than when he does it.
yeah,
I mean, you see that story after story after story in here.
yeah,
But it is, man, because he'll sit there. I've had those conversations with God. He's been like, man, I talked about this with somebody, but it was like, could you imagine being Peter? Hey, man, Jesus is talking to you, telling you how much he loves you. And the next second, he's like, get back from me, Satan, screaming at you.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, man. But I've had those. He's like, hey, man, what are you doing?
yeah,
Stop doing that.
yeah,
Like, you're picking the world. Get out of the way.
yeah,
Like, if you want to pick that, I'm going to call you Satan. I was like,
yeah,
ooh, makes me
yeah,
freak out a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but it is, man. It's just like one of those things. Deny yourself. It says, like, I don't know, just put on the armor of God, man.
Yeah.
Have some peace, have some truth, have some righteousness in your life, and then let the sword be, let the word be your sword, man. Just
Yeah,
let it go to work.
100%.
So, but yeah,
Man, kind of makes me realize, and Todd will say this too, but like just writing out the word sword, and you take away the S, obviously you have the word.
yeah,
But think about like, and I don't know, God kind of just revealed this to me. I just wrote it down on my piece of paper, and if you cross out S, and I think S can stand for self.
ooh,
You take away self, and you just have word,
mm,
and you're letting the
mm,
word speak through you, live through you, act through you. Um, you just got to get rid of self.
yeah,
You gotta put on the full armor of God, and you have to be hidden with Christ, as it says in Colossians, to be hidden with Christ. Um, and that's something
I
that
like
like I kind of have recently, like I have this image in my mind of like there's a mask, like the God is here and Carter's behind that. Like I want to be hidden behind
that.
him and let people see God through me. Um, Clearly, obviously not. I'm not God. I want to make that clear. I'm just
Right.
saying the fruits that I bear, the actions that I do, how I treat people, how I talk to people. I just want I want them to see Christ living through me, and just God's here and Carter's back here. So just
It's hard to do.
it's a very hard to do. Trust me, very hard to do. But
That's right.
that's uh, that's what I love about it, is that I might not ever attain it. I might not ever reach that level, but I'm gonna die trying. And
I
like
like
I said,
that.
I'm gonna yeah, I'm just gonna die trying. Knowing that I never will be perfect. There is no arrival destination that I can get to until I get to heaven one day. Um, but as long as, I mean, Paul says, for me to live is Christ, but for me to die is gain. So if
Bingo.
I'm living for Christ. But if I
Yep.
die, I get to go to heaven. This is awesome.
That's it. Yeah.
Like,
It's
do not be
crazy.
sad.
Yeah.
I am literally in heaven.
In that, but like the being able to say that, man, that's so much freeing. Like, I just love that saying. Like, hey, man, to die is gain. But like, there's a lot of people that are afraid to die, and it's like, hey, man, if he comes back, I mean, it's good. Like,
I'm good.
where's your comfort in dying? Like, are you good with dying? It's like it's like a heart check,
It,
right? Like, hey, man, if you were to
it's,
die right now, do you know that you're gonna look? Well, I'd go into heaven. I'd say, hey, listen, if you ever ask me, do you belong here? I'll say, I don't, but there's a guy. I've read it. There's a book. It was given to us. His name is Jesus. He has two holes in his hands. His blood covers me. Like, can you go find him in the back, wherever he's at? Go get him. He's the only way I can get in.
yeah,
He's my vouch. If you
yeah.
can go get him, I might be able to be in here. That's the only way I'm getting in that place. So that's
Amen.
my mindset. Yeah.
And
So
that's what it says. I mean, no
yeah,
one knows the Father except through the Son, and that's
that's
the only
it.
way to get into heaven is by knowing the Son. So,
That's right.
hey, I know a guy. So,
Yeah, exactly. Hey, yes. And somebody go get him. I would love to talk to
yeah,
him.
literally. I mean, I can't wait. Like, I don't know. It brings me so much joy even just talking about it. I'm like, I want to get there, you know. And if it happens, we don't know when it's gonna happen, but
Sure.
you know, and whenever God calls us home, and I'm, you know, obviously losing a loved one is extremely difficult.
Sure.
But to know that they're in heaven, you know, is so peaceful and joyous for me. And you
Yeah.
know, whenever I pass from this earth, I don't want people to be like, I don't want people to grieve at my funeral. Like, I obviously like I said, like it stinks not
Yeah.
having them here, but like I want them to be like, he's literally in heaven. Like
He's good, man.
that is so cool.
That guy's got no more pain. That guy's good, man.
That's what I'm saying. So
He's way better than us.
exactly. So
Um,
that's good
that's,
stuff. Well, I
that is.
appreciate you taking time to be
Yeah.
on this podcast, Blake. I know it was our schedules didn't line up. I know we're both busy people, but um, I just appreciate you taking the time to slow down and spend some time with me, and especially spend time with God and His Word. So just appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me, man. Hey, God is good. Let that guy
God is
work
good.
in your life, and life gets a lot better. I promise.
Amen. We'll tune in next Sunday. I got Braden Galt for the another one of my friends from Battlefield High School. Um,
Nah,
Shout out the Bobcats, Blake.
hey, let's go.
But Braden is he was a basketball player, part of the 1,000 Point Club at Battlefield. It's just a super strong Christian, really good dude. A year older than me, so I didn't know him quite as well. So I'm actually looking forward to the conversation of kind of learning about who he is a little bit more and how God has used him more recently. So tune in next Sunday to hear Braden's story. But again, Blake, thank you for the listeners. Make sure you guys take care and God bless.
I love it.